Hello, students. I'm Dr. P. Suresh, Associate Professor Radio Diagnosis. Today I'll be taking the class on acute abdomen, the radiological features of a patient presenting with acute abdomen. So, first of all, we have to see the demographic data, like because different conditions present at different age groups. For example, in newborns, there are different conditions. Infants, there are different conditions, and children, there are different conditions. As you all can see, in newborns, the commonest causes of acute abdominal pain are intestinal atresia and stenosis, meconium ileus and peritonitis, imperforate anus, annula pancreas, midgut volvulus in infants, intussusception, Meckel's diverticulum, and in children, common causes are appendicitis, non-specific mesenteric lymphadenitis, streptococcal peritonitis, and roundworm intestinal obstruction. Then coming to young adults, the common causes are appendicitis and Meckel's diverticulitis. In adults, usually it is a perforation of peptic ulcer disease or an acute cholecystitis or acute pancreatitis. In elderly, you can have a volvulus or intestinal obstruction from a malignant cause. Now, coming to the presentation in women and men, the common causes in women are ruptured ectopic gestation, twisted ovarian cyst, acute salpingitis, acute cholecystitis, acute appendicitis, primary peritonitis. And in men, the common causes are perforation of peptic ulcer, pancreatitis, volvulus, and intussusception. Now, some certain occupations can present with abdominal pain, like in lead poisoning, there will be abdominal colic, and area of residence, appendicitis and pancreatitis are common in the Western world, and social status, where the people with higher income, the affluent class usually have appendicitis because of various reasons, and diet is one of them. So, what are the common clinical features? Let us see before going to the radiological approach. So, pain is the commonest cause. When we see the pain, we have to note down the time of onset, the mode of onset, and the duration of pain. So, these are, as the slide says, different causes of pain abdomen will have periodic onset. Then coming to the site of pain, if the pain is in the flanks, it's usually a renal cause. If it's below the costal margin, the pathology can be in the liver or gallbladder, and in the epigastric region, it's usually peptic ulcer perforation or acute pancreatitis. Then shifting of pain. In appendicitis, you have the pain is felt around the umbilicus initially, and it later shifts to the right iliac fossa. Then the radiation of pain. In peptic ulcer perforation, the pain radiates to the right iliac fossa. In acute appendicitis, the pain will be felt radiating, and it will also be felt in the left iliac fossa. Pain starts in the right iliac fossa, but it would radiate to the left iliac fossa. Then some referred pain. You must know the cause of referred pain. Stomach, duodenum, jejunum will be in the epigastrium, T5 to T8. Ileum and appendix will be in the umbilicus at T9 to T10 levels. Colon, the hypogastrium, diaphragm. Diaphragmatic pain will present in the shoulder or upper part, front of the chest. Renal colic, loin to groin. Typical pain is from loin to groin, or it can be in testis, or it can be in the inner side of thigh. Biliary colic, the pain is usually felt in the inferior angle of right scapula. And pleuritic pain, abdominal wall mimicking acute abdomen. Sometimes pleurisy will mimic acute abdominal pain. Now the character of pain, colicky pain will be sharp intermittent pain on and off This can happen in intestinal obstruction, biliary tract disease, or ureteric colic, constant burning pain in peritonitis and perforated ulcer, severe agonizing pain in acute pancreatitis or torsion, and throbbing pain in hepatitis and cholecystitis. Then the changes in the character of the pain are important, and effect of pressure on pain also is important. Sometimes there will be a variation of the pain with walking, respiration, and micturition. So this is also an important factor to be considered. We must also know the aggravating and relieving factors of pain. You all will be familiar with your surgery, wherein you would have been taught about the aggravating and relieving factors for different clinical conditions that present as acute abdominal pain. Vomiting, this is also another important clinical feature. For example, biliary colic, there will be bilious vomiting. Peptic ulcer, the vomiters will have gastric contents, and dark brown vomiters will be in peritonitis in the later stages. And also you must know whether the vomiting is projectile or non-projectile. Then the frequency, whether it is constant pain or whether it is periodic pain. So certain diseases, as you all can see, will have frequency and periodicity of pain. Then some relations, whether the pain is preceded vomiting, by vomiting, or pain presents after vomiting. So these are again some important clues to the diagnosis. Then you must also take into account of the bowel habit of the patient, whether there is constipation, tenesmus, whether there is passage of mucus and blood, and whether there is diarrhea. Then in relation to micturition, so certain pathologies, pain will be aggravated by micturition. And also must ask history of hematuria, which is blood in urine. Then the personal history is important. Always the last menstrual period should be taken in case of women for missed periods or suspected ectopic pregnancy. Now coming to the radiological investigations. You have many radiological investigations for acute abdominal pain. To start off, X-rays are the basic radiological investigations. You can do an abdominal X-ray, preferably in the erect position, so that the air, if there is any leak, it will rise up and it will be seen very clearly on X-ray. You can also do a supine abdominal radiograph if the patient is non-motile and if the patient is bedridden. So as you all can see, an erect chest and a supine abdomen are the basic. We must cover the domes of the diaphragm. Sometimes a horizontal ray abdominal radiograph with either the patient in erect or left lateral decubitus is taken. This will give more value to the prior findings, and it also shows fluid levels. Chest X-ray should be taken in the erect position if the patient is able to do so, to rule out chest conditions which mimics the acute pain abdomen. As I said, abdominal X-rays should be taken in supine and erect positions, and also lateral decubitus film should be taken. In a supine X-ray, we have to see the distribution of the gas, if there is any soft tissue mass, then if there is any obliteration of fat planes like the psoas planes, psoas muscle planes will be obliterated in case of abscess, psoas abscess. Erect abdominal X-rays show fluid levels and free gas. So we have to see whether there is more than or equal to 3 small bowel fluid levels longer than 2.5 centimeters. If they are present, it signifies there is some pathology. Pneumoperitoneum, air in the lesser sac, and gas-filled urinary loop can be seen with the lateral decubitus X-ray. Now, first is pneumoperitoneum. What is pneumoperitoneum? Pneumoperitoneum is free gas under the domes of the diaphragm, usually seen in perforation. So on an X-ray, it is possible to demonstrate as little as 1 ml of free gas by proper positioning for 10 minutes before taking film. So the patient should be seated upright or made to stand for 10 minutes so that the air settles and rises up. Exceptions to this are sealing of the perforation. If the perforation is sealed, you will not find pneumoperitoneum, and adhesions around the perforation site, as well as leak of gas at the site of perforation. Lack of gas at the site of perforation. So here you can see a erect abdominal radiograph showing the pneumoperitoneum on both sides. The arrow mark points towards the dome of the left hemidiaphragm, below which there is free air on both sides. You can see it very clearly on this chest radiograph, including the domes where you can see free air under the domes of the diaphragm. So here you can see another X-ray showing the pneumoperitoneum, wherein there is a supine abdominal radiograph and a triangular collection of free gas is demonstrated in the subhepatic region. And also you can see the falciform ligament which is being outlined. The arrowheads points towards the falciform ligament. So this is another case of pneumoperitoneum. This is a supine abdominal radiograph. You can see both sides of the bowel wall. So you can see the inner wall as well as the outer wall. This happens when there is air outlining the bowel wall. This is called as Wriggler's sign. So both the inside and outside wall of multiple bowel lobes are seen. Now this is a contrast enhanced abdominal CT scan, wherein you can see two CT sections. Figure A shows the abdominal window and figure B shows the other window settings for the free gas. So here you can see the free gas is very well demarcated, but in the abdominal window it is not so much demarcated. Free gas is seen as black or hypodense on CT. Its HU value will be in minus, that is negative, usually minus 100 and 0 to minus 100, and sometimes it will be more negative. So what are the causes of pseudo-pneumoperitoneum? Sometimes subdiaphragmatic fat, curvilinear pulmonary collapse, uneven diaphragm, distended viscous or mental fat, and subpulmonary pneumothorax can cause features like pneumoperitoneum. In this case, it is called as pseudo-pneumoperitoneum. So here you can see an X-ray. There is a band of curvilinear pulmonary collapse. So here you can see it's marked with black arrows. A crescent of normal lung is seen beneath. It stimulates pneumoperitoneum almost exactly like air under the dome of diaphragm. So this is pseudo-pneumoperitoneum. Now next, coming to intestinal obstruction. So it can be due to gastric dilatation, small bowel obstruction, or large bowel obstruction. We have to differentiate between the various causes of intestinal obstruction. So what are the causes of gastric dilatation? The common causes are paralytic ileus, mechanical gastric outlet obstruction, gastric volvulus, swallowing of air, intubation, secondary to intestinal obstruction, and drugs. So you can see acute gastric dilatation. This is a supine abdominal X-ray. So you can see the entire stomach being dilated. This is a 38-year-old woman admitted in diabetic pre-coma. So you can see how the stomach is grossly dilated. Now next, coming to gastric volvulus. It is the twisting of the stomach around the mesenteric axis or longitudinal axis. So it is associated with elevation of the left hemidiaphragm. It has to be differentiated from cecal volvulus, and because the diagnostic and the therapeutic approach is different for both conditions, cecal volvulus will have one or two haustra, which is usually seen. It's usually in the inferior part of the cecum, and it points caudally in contrast to the antrum, which is always pointing cranially. So this is very important. You have to distinguish between small and large bowel dilatation. So what are the important features for differentiation? Valvulae conniventus. This is usually seen in the small bowel in large amounts in the jejunum, and in the large intestine, valvulae conniventus will be absent. So the next is the number and distribution of the bowel lobes. Small bowel will be mainly central, and there will be many lobes which are dilated, but large bowel will be few, and they are usually situated in the periphery of the abdomen. Haustra. Haustra will be present in large bowel obstruction, that is, large bowel will be a haustra will be seen, and in small bowel there will be no haustra. The diameter of the bowel lobes will be approximately 3 to 5 centimeters, and in large bowel it's usually more than 5 centimeters. The radius will be large in large bowel and small in small bowel. Solid feces will usually be present in case of large bowel obstruction and not so common in small bowel obstruction. So this is a case of small bowel obstruction. So here you can see this is A, this is a supine abdominal radiograph, and B, this is an erect abdominal radiograph. So what you can see, multiple dilated lobes, bowel lobes of both gas filled and fluid filled small bowel. So these are multiple dilated bowel lobes are easily identified in this X-rays. So there is little or no gas seen in the large bowel. The large bowel shows little or no gas. Multiple fluid levels are noted on the erect film. See, as you can see, there are multiple fluid levels seen on the erect film. This is again a case of small bowel obstruction. Here what you can appreciate is there are tiny fluid filled bowel lobes and some air filled bowel lobes. Multiple dilated bowel lobes are seen in the center of the abdomen. Here you can appreciate the string of beads sign. So there are dilated proximal small bowel is predominantly gas filled with a few long fluid levels. More distally, the small bowel is fluid filled and bubbles of gas are trapped between the valvulae conniventus. These are bubbles of gas trapped between the valvulae conniventus. So this produces a chain of bubbles. So this is also called as string of beads sign, seen in small bowel obstruction. Next, it is important to differentiate strangulating obstruction because it's a emergency. So on an X-ray, you will usually see a soft tissue mass, that is a serotumor. CT is more sensitive for diagnosing the strangulated obstruction. So small bowel obstruction due to an incisional hernia in an obese patient. So this is a topogram and this is an abdominal CT. So the scout image shows fluid, shows dilated small bowel, and the patient is obese. In the CT, you can easily see the midline incisional hernia, which is herniating out of the abdominal wall, and it contains a small bowel lobe, which is a content of the hernia. Now this will lead to strangulation, and we have to repair and free the bowel as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be ischemia and the necrosis of bowel. Now next, coming to intussusception. Now this is common in children less than 2 years of age. On an X-ray, the soft tissue is surrounded by crescent of gas. This is the target sign. In adults, usually it's caused by a tumor of the terminal ileum. It can be a lipoma, lymphoma, or metastasis from melanoma. In adults, intussusception is commonly caused by a malignant tumor, and this tumors act as lead points in adults. So here is a case of a supine abdominal radiograph showing intussusception. There are multiple gas filled loops of slightly dilated small bowel, which you all can appreciate. In addition, there is a soft tissue mass in the right iliac fossa. The black arrow points towards a soft tissue mass which is opaque in the right iliac fossa. This is a 5-month-old child with mesenteric adenitis. So this is a CT scan showing a small bowel obstruction due to a small bowel melanoma metastasis which has caused jejunal intussusception. So the grossly dilated loop of jejunum contains oral contrast medium. So, and here this is a lead point and leads to the intussusception. So you can see the intussusception here, which is shown by the black arrow, and this contains a characteristic central mesenteric fat. So in intussusception, the mesentery will have fat. The mesentery will occupy the center of the intussusception. So this is a case of small bowel obstruction due to intussusception. Mesenteric fat can be identified by its relatively less dense character. That is, it is more hyperdense compared to the surrounding bowel. Now next, coming to large bowel obstruction, this is a schematic diagram showing the types: type 1A, type 1B and type 2. So here it's important to know the anatomy. So you have the ascending colon, then the hepatic flexure of colon, the transverse colon, the splenic flexure of colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon and rectum. So these are the different types of large bowel obstruction. Now coming to cecal volvulus, it's also called as right colon volvulus. It is caused when the cecum and ascending colon are on a mesentery, associated with malrotation, usually in 30 to 60 years of age. So acute complication of the cecal volvulus is gangrene. Clinical features usually are not significant. 1 to 2 haustra can be identified in case of cecal volvulus. So you can see here, it's a supine film. The cecum is distended and is almost occupying the center of the abdomen. Haustral markings are readily identified in this dilated cecum lying low in the central abdomen. There is no significant small bowel obstruction, as you can see. This is cecal volvulus. Now next, coming to sigmoid volvulus. It usually occurs in old people and is chronic with acute episodes. So there will be no haustra. The left flank overlap sign will be there. Apex of the volvulus will be under the left hemidiaphragm and the liver will also be overlapped. So these are the important signs in case of sigmoid volvulus. So this is a sigmoid volvulus supine radiograph showing a hugely dilated ahaustral loop of bowel. It can be seen arising from the pelvis in the shape of an inverted U. So this is like a shape of an inverted U or a coffee bean type. So this is called as a sigmoid volvulus. So you can see haustrated ascending and descending colon can be identified separate from the involved sigmoid loop. So the region of the volvulus will not have haustra. It's grossly dilated. Its inverted U shape helps us to differentiate this from the surrounding normal large bowel. Now next is paralytic ileus. What are the causes of paralytic ileus? It can be post-operative, peritonitis, inflammation, trauma, congestive cardiac failure, renal colic, leaking abdominal aortic aneurysm, hypokalemia, infections and drugs. So here you can see this is a supine abdominal radiograph. There is generalized dilatation of both the small bowel as well as the large bowel. This is an 84-year-old woman with generalized peritonitis following perforation of a gastric ulcer. Now, certain inflammatory conditions cause acute abdomen. These are intra-abdominal abscess, acute appendicitis, acute cholecystitis, and acute pancreatitis. So, what is an intra-abdominal abscess? This is usually a subphrenic and subhepatic abscess. We must know about the origin of the abscess. On an X-ray, right hemidiaphragm is higher because the abscess will cause mass effect. There will be associated basal lung consolidation in 70%. There will be associated unilateral pleural effusion in 60% of people. There will be decreased diaphragmatic motion. Generalized paralytic ileus will be seen. Sometimes scoliosis will be seen towards the lesion, and there will be decreased organ motility. So this is a case of postoperative right subphrenic abscess. A chest X-ray is seen on here. You can see here on the chest X-ray raised right hemidiaphragm and a small pleural effusion. So the left hemidiaphragm is normal, the right hemidiaphragm is elevated. CT scan demonstrates the subphrenic collection, which is shown by black arrow. Next, coming to acute appendicitis. On X-rays, there are ileal and cecal fluid levels in 50% of cases. There is loss of the source outline. There can be an appendicolith, also called as appendix calculus. Sentinel loop sign, that is a prominent loop can be seen sometimes. The cecum can be dilated. There is widening and blurring of the properitoneal fat planes. Sometimes there will be gas in the appendix, and right lower quadrant mass will be seen sometimes indenting the cecum. So in ultrasound, the typical feature of acute appendicitis is it's a blind ending tubular structure at the point of tenderness. It is non-compressible. More than 7 mm or more in diameter, there will be no peristalsis. So these are the important features. So sometimes there will be an appendicolith casting a caustic shadow. Sometimes there will be fluid or abscess surrounding the appendix, and cecal pole will have edema. So here you can see a case of acute appendicitis diagnosed in ultrasound, wherein the right iliac fossa shows a hyperechoic, non-compressible tubular structure measuring more than 6 mm in diameter with surrounding hyperechoic fat. That is, the wall of the appendix will have fat, so it is hyperechoic. So hyperechoic means more bright. So this is a sagittal section, and this is a transverse section. So this is non-compressible tubular blind ending structure in the right iliac fossa at the point of maximum tenderness. On CT, the appendix will be seen very well, and if there is appendicolith, it will also be easily identified. So CT shows an appendix which contains a dense appendicolith. You can see a stone with surrounding inflammatory changes. This is acute appendicitis. What are the inflammatory changes in CT? There will be fat stranding, that is periappendiceal fat stranding. Sometimes there will be fluid collection beside the appendix. So here this figure demonstrates an inflammatory mass of the appendix. Now CT shows a soft tissue density in the right iliac fossa containing an appendicolith. So this is the appendicolith. So there is abscess formation was seen on the adjacent images. Acute cholecystitis. On X-rays, gallstones are seen in 20% of people. Wherein they usually have duodenal ileus of hepatic flexure of colon, right hypochondrial mass due to an enlarged gallbladder, and gas within the biliary system. On ultrasound, the gallbladder will be thickened and echogenic. There will be sometimes pericholecystic fluid. Gallstones can easily be seen, which are sometimes they will be echogenic and sometimes they will be non-echogenic. Usually the gallstones are echogenic. Echogenic sediment will be seen in the lumen. This is the obstruction. Due to obstruction, there will be inspissated bile or pus. So here is a ultrasound image showing the distended gallbladder with multiple calculi, and the wall of the gallbladder is also thick. Next is acute pancreatitis. On X-rays, on the left lateral decubitus film, gas will be seen in a dilated duodenal lobe. There will be gas within the pancreas as multiple small bubbles, which gives a mottled appearance to the pancreas if there is pancreatic necrosis. Sometimes there will be dilated loss of bubble due to paralytic ileus. On ultrasound, the pancreas will be diffusely enlarged and hyperechoic, and it will have decreased echogenicity, that is hyperechoic. There will be loss of peristalsis of the duodenum if the duodenum is affected. So on CT, we can usually demonstrate the necrosis and hemorrhage. So this is a case of pancreatitis wherein you can see a diffusely enlarged and bulky hyperechoic pancreas. So what are the other conditions causing acute abdomen? Gas forming infections due to Clostridium welchi, E. coli, renal colic. This can be diagnosed on IVU, leaking abdominal aortic aneurysm, and acute gynecological conditions. Thank you for your patience.